I'm asking you a question.
I am a grown woman.
Says the woman with the Hello Kitty waffle iron.
Love her or hate her, there's no denying that Lorelai Gilmore is an unforgettable character. As the vibrant, witty, and endlessly talkative mother from Gilmore Girls, Lorelai's sunny disposition and fierce independence have made her a standout figure, captivating both those in her fictional world and the audience watching at home. Yet Lorelai's story carries a constant tension, a dichotomy that defines much of her character arc. Despite her charm and resilience, she's often perceived as immature, avoidant, and emotionally stunted. These traits, while sometimes endearing, also drive many of the conflicts she faces through the series. So, where do we draw the line between youthful spirit and arrested development? At what point does a free-spirited lifestyle become a mask for emotional avoidance? Is Lorelai asserting her independence, or is she running from growth and commitment? Today we'll take a deeper look into the life of Lorelai Gilmore to explore whether she's truly stuck in a state of arrested development, or if perhaps she's actually ahead of her time, as a woman, as a mother, and as part of her community.
Fuzzy clock and it didn't purr on time.
It didn't purr?
It's fuzzy. It purrs.
From a young age, Lorelai Gilmore knew what she wanted, or more precisely, what she didn't want. Raised in an affluent family in Hartford, Connecticut, she had access to everything most people could only dream of, at least in the material sense. But while her life was filled with privilege, it lacked the warmth and emotional support that truly mattered. Despite being a so-called rich kid, surrounded by comfort and luxury, Lorelai's childhood and teenage years were marked by feelings of isolation, restriction, and emotional suffocation. Her strained relationship with her parents was at the core of this emotional void. With a distant father and a tense and controlling mother and no siblings to confide in, Lorelai grew up without the emotional intimacy most children rely on. The material possessions that surrounded her became a hollow substitute for genuine closeness. In response to her loneliness, young Lorelai developed a rich inner world, assigning names and personalities to inanimate objects and creating imaginary companions, as well as relying on pop culture and music, which helped her develop a rich taste that she would pass on to her daughter. This behavior, while whimsical on the surface, reveals a deep yearning for connection and companionship that her caregivers failed to provide her. Interestingly enough, she carried this imaginative habit into adulthood, adding to her signature charm and eccentricity.
Don't get too attached.
Hey, Gomer.
There you go.
Oh, don't be scared, Pinky.
And now there's Pinky.
After becoming pregnant with Rory, Lorelai made the bold and life-changing decision to leave her parents' home. Refusing to raise her child in the cold, stifling environment she grew up in, she stepped away from a life of guaranteed luxury to forge her own path. It was a risky, even dangerous move, but one that revealed just how strong-willed and determined she truly was. Lorelai is fiercely independent and resolute, with a clear vision of how she wants to live her life. Ironically, these are traits she shared with her mother, one of the many reasons they clash so frequently. But unlike her mother, Lorelai chose a life defined by a personal freedom and authenticity over social status and wealth. She rejected the roadmap laid out for her, choosing instead to reach her milestones in her own terms, at her own pace. To Lorelai, maturity looks different than it does for most people. While some of her behaviors may seem childlike or whimsical, she also demonstrates remarkable resilience and resourcefulness, qualities not always found in those who share her privileged upbringing. She's practical, assertive, and grounded, using these strengths to build a life for herself and Rory from the ground. In Stars Hollow, she found what she had always longed for, a supportive, open-hearted community. Arriving as a teenage, single mother, Lorelai was embraced by the town's quirky and compassionate residents. In many ways, they became the real-life embodiment of the imaginary friends she once created. Only now, they offer tangible love, comfort, and connection.
To the day when this skinny little teenage girl showed up at the inn. She had this tiny little thing in her arms.
The little thing named Rory.
This sense of belonging inspired Lorelai to give back. She became an active, beloved member of the community, creating costumes for town events, participating in local traditions, and offering emotional support whatever needed. From throwing a wake for Babette's cat, to standing by Luke and Suki during tough times, to being a maternal figure for both Lane and Paris. Lorelai consistently showed up for those around her. Her contributions didn't go unnoticed. She became an essential thread in the fabric of Star's hollowed life. Lorelai took a tremendous risk in leaving the safety of her privileged upbringing, but in doing so, she gained something far more valuable: a life of authenticity, a sense of purpose, and a warm, loving community. She didn't just create a better life for herself, she built a safe, joyful world for Rory as well.
I don't know if you realize, but every gift so far has been for you.
Yes, well, in this town, I am the queen.
Gilmore may come across as quirky and inconsistent at times, often lacking follow-through on things that don't capture her interest. She tends to ignore what she deems unimportant, books Rory recommends, personal projects she left unfinished, and even a few ill-fated pets over the years.
That thing with the hamster was a long time ago. It was a long time ago.
What about the rabbit? That poor turtle, it was supposed to outlive you.
Her attention drifts when something feels tedious or insignificant. But when it comes to the big things, those that truly matter, Lorelai shows an impressive capacity for focus, discipline, and determination. Her greatest accomplishments stand as proof: raising Rory, managing the Independence Inn, and later launching her own business, the Dragonfly Inn. In these moments, Lorelai steps up with undeniable strength and clarity. Through her journey, she cultivated the skills needed to survive and thrive. Her charisma, resilience, quick wit, and people skills became her tool in navigating life as a single mother. With them, she carved out a life she could be proud of, one that allowed her to provide for Rory and grow into the woman she wanted to become. Lorelai takes pride in the life she's built. She managed to raise Rory to be healthy, well-fed, well-educated, and let's be honest, an incredibly impressive young woman. Rory is smart, ambitious, kind, and driven, thanks in large part to the love and support she received from her mother. Despite her casual, sometimes childish demeanor, Lorelai was a strong and consistent parental figure. At times, Rory seemed more grounded and organized, balancing out her mother's free-spirited, go-with-the-flow approach. But Lorelai's aim wasn't to be the perfect parent. It was to give Rory the emotional protection she herself never had. She shielded Rory from the harsh realities of life whenever possible, ensuring her childhood felt safe and secure. Two examples stand out. First, when Lorelai and baby Rory live in a small shed behind the Independence Inn. Though the circumstances were far from ideal, Rory remembers that time with warmth and nostalgia.
Over there, and Mom put up this really pretty curtain around the tub so that it looked like a real bathroom. And we would just sit outside at night when the inn would have parties, and we'd just listen to music and feed the ducks. And
the second is during the renovation of the Dragonfly Inn, when Lorelai struggled financially but made sure Rory remained blissfully unaware of how tight things were. Even as an adult, Lorelai continued to protect Rory from memories that might cast a shadow on her childhood.
Hopefully you're over the time that I took you for the pony ride and the pony was old and just sort of stopped and laid down.
that pony ride when I was a kid? You're forgetting one little tidbit there. That pony did not lie down, he died.
Lorelai might have not been able to give Rory everything money could buy, but she gave everything she possibly could. Love, comfort, safety, and an opportunity to start life on her own terms. And yes, Rory did make her fair share of mistakes later on, some of which may stem from the overly supportive, sometimes enabling environment Lorelai created. But those choices were rooted in Lorelai's desire to break the generational cycle she grew up in, one where love was conditional and stepping out of line meant being ignored or dismissed. Determined not to repeat the patterns of her own upbringing, Lorelai forged a new kind of parent-child relationship. She closed the emotional gap she had always felt with her mother, Emily, and raised Rory in a home that emphasized warmth, flexibility, and emotional safety. She was fun, reassuring, a little eccentric, and endlessly supportive. Importantly, she also encouraged Rory to experience life for herself. In one memorable episode, when Rory hesitates to attend a formal Chilton ball, Lorelai urges her to go. Not because she wants to conform, but because she wants Rory to have the chance to decide for herself whether she enjoys it. Lorelai didn't want her daughter to be an extension of herself, but a person with her own choices and experiences.
If the reason you don't want to go is because you really don't want to go and not because you are in any way afraid, then this is the last time I'll mention it. I promise.
Still, no matter how hard Lorelai tried to keep Rory grounded in their star's hollow life, she couldn't completely shield her from the allure of the wealthy world she had left behind. When Rory got a taste of the opulent lifestyle her parents provided, full of culture, access, and elegance, she was intrigued. Unlike Lorelai, who had rejected that world, Rory found parts of it inviting. This difference came down to experience. Rory was polite, bookish, and composed, traits that naturally appealed to Emily and Richard. In contrast, Lorelai had always been rebellious, non-conforming, and emotionally bold. Lorelai expected Rory to see her whole life through the same lens she did, stifling, cold, and hollow. But Rory's experience was different, at least in the beginning. When Rory temporarily moved in with Richard and Emily during season 6, she embraced the comfort and luxury at first, but she soon discovered that those privileges came with strings attached. The freedom and autonomy that Lorelai had always prioritized were noticeably absent. It was then that Rory began to understand, on a personal level, the kind of control and emotional rigidity that had driven her mother away.
You are becoming more like your mother with every passing day.
And you are becoming more like my mother's mother with every passing day.
In many ways, Lorelai's parenting made the close relationship between Rory and her grandparents possible. By breaking the cycle of emotional distance and performative affection, Lorelai raised a daughter who could connect with Emily and Richard in ways she never could. She showed them, through Rory, that capability, character, and success don't have to come from rigidity and tradition, but from freedom, self-awareness, and genuine support.
Did a lovely job.
Thank you.
With Rory and the dress.
Lorelai Gilmore saw beyond the illusion of perfection her environment projected. She knew that world from the inside and recognized early on exactly what she didn't want to become. Much of this realization came from observing her mother, Emily Gilmore, and the rigid appearance-obsessed circle she belonged to. Emily and her social world operated on strict rules, unspoken expectations, and harsh consequences for stepping out of line. And Lorelai stepped out of line long before her teenage pregnancy. She simply didn't fit into that mold, nor did she want to. Her relationship with her father, Richard Gilmore, wasn't much better. He was emotionally distant, rarely acknowledging her beyond obligatory concern for her financial stability, which often seemed more about appearances than genuine care. While Emily might engage Lorelai with criticism or passive aggression, Richard mostly remained indifferent, treating her more like an anomaly than a daughter. When Lorelai returned to her parents' home, whether physically or just for dinner, their dynamic hadn't evolved. They treated her either like a rebellious teenager or an unwelcome guest. Their interactions were peppered with subtle punishments, dismissive comments, passive-aggressive remarks, and emotional distance. Despite the years that had passed, the relationship seemed frozen in time.
I feel 16.
In response to this cold, conditional love, Lorelai developed a protective armor of sarcasm and humor. Her quick wit and playfulness became both a defense mechanism and a way to disarm them. She could play the game, quote-unquote, until tensions boiled over and she was pushed to lash out, especially in heated exchanges with Emily, where the conflict often became more raw and confrontational. The dysfunction in the Gilmore household stemmed from deep concern with perception rather than emotional authenticity. Their relationships were built around how things looked to others, not how they truly felt. With that foundation, it's no surprise that Lorelai's departure and the emotional rupture it caused was inevitable. What makes it more painful is how Richard and Emily often favor Rory, sometimes subtly playing a twisted, good kid, bad kid dynamic between her and Lorelai. The irony, of course, is that the very reason they admire Rory is because Lorelai raised her outside of the environment they themselves created. Rory is the product of Lorelai's intentional parenting, shaped in opposition to the rigid upbringing Lorelai endured.
Why can't we have what you and Rory have?
We are best friends first and mother and daughter second, and you and I are mother and daughter always.
We can also acknowledge that part of this behavior that Emily and Richard have towards Lorelai is not only related to the shame and the embarrassment they felt after Lorelai got pregnant, but also to the unhealed pain that they felt when she left them, just leaving a letter behind. Even if their relationship wasn't perfect, they did lose a daughter that day, which is something that Lorelai only understood after she was a grown-up. When we compare Rory to Lorelai at the same age, it becomes clear that Lorelai's tough exterior was built through hardship and survival. Rory, on the other hand, had a softer landing, thanks to the emotional and practical stability Lorelai worked so hard to provide. By the way, I will explore this contrast in more detail in a future video about Rory Gilmore, so stay tuned for it. Lorelai has always rejected anything that may tie her to a dynamic where she feels trapped or controlled. Her childhood taught her that comfort came at a cost, emotional compliance. So, while she chose a more modest life, she did it freely because for Lorelai, freedom mattered more than luxury.
God, I must have had a million dresses like that when I was a kid.
Doesn't really scream you.
No. I did all the screaming.
Her relationship with Emily illustrates a kind of emotional adolescence that Lorelai never quite outgrows. After leaving home as a teenager, there was little room for reconciliation or rediscovery. Emily didn't get to know Lorelai as an adult because their closeness was never there to begin with. Their interactions remained emotionally charged and stuck in old patterns. But over time, as Richard and Emily began to see glimpses of Lorelai's world, they slowly recognized that, even without following their path, she had created a meaningful, successful life. She became a homeowner, a respected member of her community, a successful manager, and eventually the owner of her own inn. She built it all on her terms. And even if her parents couldn't fully admit it, they came to understand, on some level, that Lorelai had done something remarkable. She rejected their expectations, yet managed to carve out a life filled with accomplishments, love, and self-respect. That kind of growth, that kind of strength, is something no amount of money or status can buy. They may never openly acknowledge it, pride and generational expectations stand in the way, but both Richard and Emily deep down know that Lorelai proved them wrong. She succeeded financially, personally, and in raising a strong, intelligent daughter. The one area where she still struggles, though, is emotional growth. And that's the conversation that we're going to follow with next. Lorelai Gilmore has a happy-go-lucky nature, a kind of quirky authenticity that naturally repels those who live for appearances, but draws in like-minded souls who understand where she's coming from. Her charm is magnetic, but it also comes paired with intense stubbornness and a deep reluctance to give up her independence. Her willfulness, combined with an avoidant attachment style, often leads her into romantic relationships she's not entirely sure about. She enjoys the initial excitement, shows her most vibrant side, and connects easily. But once things become serious, she gets scared and pulls away. Lorelai struggles to compromise on her freedom, and understandably so. She had to do incredibly hard things alone from a very young age. That kind of self-reliance becomes hard to let go of. By the time she reaches adulthood, Lorelai is fiercely protective of her autonomy. She resists giving it up for anyone, even in love. Ironically, the men who ask her to meet them halfway are often the ones she's never fully sure about in the first place. This reluctance to compromise makes Lorelai quite selfish and someone who can only be in a committed relationship under certain strict conditions that allow her to continue keeping the life she has built over the years, and that she's so fond of. And here's how this rather ironic, strict approach to what she stands for relates to the most important romantic prospects in her life.
Lorelai, it's Max Medina. Max Medina.
Max Medina is a clear example of the previously mentioned selfishness. He's kind, respectful, and accommodating, perhaps too much for someone like Lorelai. His feelings were genuine, and he was open to learning her world and adapting to it. But Lorelai never fully committed. Max was willing to compromise everything to keep her, but in doing so, he was at risk of losing himself. Lorelai knew she was stringing him along, hoping she'd eventually feel what she thought she should, but her fear of settling or of losing her freedom overpowered that potential. This ultimately led Lorelai to act in a rather cowardly way towards Max, leaving town on the day of their wedding. While there was a genuine attraction and affection between them, it wasn't enough. Deep down, both Lorelai and Max sensed that going through with the marriage would mean betraying a part of themselves. Max was willing to overlook Lorelai's commitment issues, ready to compromise in order to keep her, but Lorelai couldn't do the same. She knew that marrying him under those circumstances would have meant forcing herself into a life she wasn't truly ready for or willing to live.
Are you and Max getting married?
No. Why? Because I didn't want to try on my wedding dress every night. Christopher.
Dad!
Christopher represents a different yet still flawed story. He was Lorelai's first love, Rory's father, and someone who, on paper, seemed like the perfect match. They share a past, came from similar backgrounds, and had an unshakable bond through Rory. But Christopher had always been unreliable and emotionally inconsistent. Even Rory came to expect that he wouldn't follow through with his promises. He would drift in and out of their lives unpredictably, and Lorelai had to shield Rory from the fallout again and again. When Christopher finally decided to fight for Lorelai, it was only because Emily suggested he had a chance. That lack of initiative speaks volumes. Deep down, Lorelai knew that she couldn't build a future with someone who only showed up when prompted by others.
Your dad is definitely going to be there.
And he definitely said definitely?
Definitely.
So there's a 50-50 chance.
Please, Luke. Please, please, please.
How many cups have you had this morning?
None.
Plus?
5, but yours is better.
That's why she eventually chooses Luke. Despite his gruff exterior and occasional grumpiness, Luke was always there. He never demanded anything in return for his support. He was present through her highs and lows, quietly offering steady loyalty and care. He didn't try to change her. He accepted her quirks, her chaos, and her stubbornness, and he showed up consistently. Luke genuinely enjoyed Lorelai's company. He respected her even if he didn't always agree with her. Whether it was building an ice skate rink in her backyard so she could make peace with snow, yes, it makes sense if you have seen the episode. Stepping back from buying the Twickham house because she wanted to stay in hers, or even installing a TV in his bedroom so she could fall asleep comfortably. He made space for her in his life in ways big and small. And let's not forget how he cared for Rory. Not out of obligation, but out of real affection and admiration. He treated her like his own daughter, often showing a level of consistency and concern that Christopher never could. Luke was the closest thing Rory had to a father figure, and his love for her was genuine.
My daughter? Mine?
Oh, really? Well then, where the hell were you when she got the chicken pox but only eat mashed potatoes for a week? Or where were you when she graduated high school or started college?
Still, it wasn't a one-sided relationship. Lorelai had a meaningful impact on Luke too. She accepted him as he was, grumpy, stoic, and particular, and never asked him to become someone else. She saw the warmth beneath his rough exterior and appreciated the love he offered in his own quiet way. Their connection was built on mutual respect and understanding. She didn't try to change him. She just showed up and he met her there. Their relationship may have not been perfect, but it worked. Long before they even became a couple. It was built on a foundation of friendship, mutual appreciation, and an unspoken agreement that neither needed to be anything but exactly who they were.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, is Lorelai's approach to life foolproof? No. Is it the most mature path guaranteed to lead her to constant stability and happiness? Also no. Will this allow her the freedom she believes she wants? Maybe, but that depends. What makes Lorelai's journey fascinating is that she wasn't looking for an easy road. She wasn't after safety, convenience, or the superficial comforts that quick fixes often provide. Lorelai's constant in life is the fight to preserve the joy and wonder that was denied to her in her early years. She managed to build her own world, create her own peace, and discover a life she never knew was possible. A life that gave her everything she didn't realize she needed. She was brave enough to sacrifice comfort and security to find something that resonated more deeply with her true self. Lorelai decided to break free from the boundaries her family imposed on her and made a difficult choice that ultimately gave her the fulfillment she had long been seeking. Did she make mistakes along the way? Of course. Did she face hardships? Absolutely. But each challenge made her stronger and wiser. So, we can dismiss her cheerful, peppy attitude towards life as immature? Definitely not. Lorelai has proven that an open attitude towards the unknown is far from childish. In fact, it's one of the bravest things we can do in the face of daily uncertainty. An open heart and a welcoming spirit towards life may expose us to disappointment, but it's also what brings us closer to the life we're truly meant to live. Lorelai's willingness to stay open, despite her past, is a testament of her courage, and that's something we can all admire.
Everybody screws up, Lane. That's what happens. I have a great life and an amazing kid, and I took a detour. I ended up someplace good.
Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please like, comment, and share. Bye-bye!